Hey, this is Ben from T3 Productions bringing you another top 8 game from the Blackstone Owl Store Championship. This is game number 13 on your brackets losers finals. On the left we have John D'Alessandri playing Industrial Genomics, and on the right we have Raphael playing Geist. And we're just going to kick it right off here. John is drawing up a little bit, getting the IG ability turned on as soon as humanly possible, icing up and gaining $1. I've noticed that this is a tactic that John has used quite a bit, and he's just trying to get his ability turned on as quickly as possible. I'm sure if he had Jackson, he would have probably installed and used him, just to kind of start to get things going here. And with deck size, it is a 54-card deck, so it can afford to be a little bit slower. Plus Jinteki, not everybody really wants to run, and Raphael responding in a much the same setup way. This is a turn that both of these guys have done throughout the top 8. Raph getting a Scheherazade and a Fall Guy up, so the Scheherazade will start making money almost immediately, or at least making Raphael not lose tempo, and that Fall Guy will gain a lot of usefulness a little bit later once we see these tech traders and a little bit more hit the table. The draw ability is always good, and Raphael does have a Maker's Eye in his hand, so if John continues to leave R&D open, which it looks like he's going to here, Raphael might be able to get a really good punish here, get a good dig in the beginning of the game, maybe snipe some agendas. Trying to draw up and look for some options here. He's probably looking for some breakers. That drive-by is probably going to be really, really helpful against John's assets. At the very least, it can save some heartbreak. And he does go in for the Maker's Eye. So seeing 3 cards off the top, John doesn't really have anything he can do about it. Oh. And Raphael hits the snare right off the bat. That is not really what he wants to see, especially not in this early game portion where he has to get some of these cards out. Playing against Jinteki, you have to always assume the snares. The second Maker's Eye and the drive-by is really, really going to hurt. The Forger might set him back a little bit. Geist does need the Cloud Breakers in order to really get going, but I'm sure Raphael plays 3, and with Street Peddlers and whatnot, it's probably not going to be too long until he finds another one. And Raphael also did see a Turtlebacks, and I didn't quite make out what the third card was. Couldn't trash the Turtlebacks, just not enough money. And I feel like that's going to be a theme that we see here. Raphael's deck, this Geist deck, and this engine in particular, early game doesn't have a lot of steam. It needs to make money anyways it can. We do see the Siphon in Raphael's hand. That could be a huge benefit if he can get that off. Of course, you need to know what's in HQ. But Raphael might be thinking that is his long-term plan right now. Let John money up, build up himself, and then go in for the Siphon, steal some bucks, probably have to clear the tags afterwards, but either way, able to get in there and steal some money is going to be a huge kickstart to this economy. Raphael's going to need, he only needs a little bit with like tech traders and things like that to get off the ground. I believe the spike costs a credit to install, which is going to be negated by that Scheherazade, so that's a huge help too. But he is still going to need money to trash these assets, and that's going to be the question mark, is whether or not this Geist build, or maybe it's this type of criminal archetype, has the money to deal with this asset spam that we're seeing so prevalent in the meta right now. And John is just getting money with the launch campaigns and the melanges. That's going to be very, very helpful. Raphael might want to consider trying to trash these, checking archives, and then blowing up the melange and launch campaign. Seems good. He's probably going to have to risk a little bit of net damage, knowing John and Shock, as Jinteki loves to do. But the money game is what's going to be important here. As you can see, John is really able to leverage his traps and is able to leverage those assets and make it very, very difficult to trash. Even Wizard probably has a very difficult time trashing these cards once John starts getting, or once Industrial Genomics starts getting those cards in the discard pile. It increases so dramatically, and it's scary because you want to draw so you don't get hit with shocks, but when you draw up, then you're increasing the likelihood of something more important being drawn and lost, and that Street Peddler is going to hurt. Raphael needs that acceleration, although he does have the Forger in his hand. I'm not sure what else he generally gets. He's used as a situational card so far in the tournament. getting kind of whatever he needs, or using it as a last surprise, maybe pulling out a corroder, I can recall. But he does have the forger, so he has the parts. I think the value of the tech trader, though, is here anyway, is just to make it so, or excuse me, the value of the street peddler is just to make it so it's easier. He gives a little bit more options. It basically gives Raphael an 8-card hand size, and gives him a lot of flexibility mid-run, which he might not have otherwise. I know myself, before Tech Trader came out, I was actually playing around with Geist, ended up with self-modifying code, which was always fun, but doubt you're going to see that here. Just counting Raphael's influence, he has way more than you would need, or than you would have available for the SMC. And John coming up with the Museum of History, shuffling. I actually didn't catch what he shuffled back in. I believe that was a snare. That's a really good play. And this IG deck really leverages its traps so well. And with Museum of History and the IG ability, it's actually a really elegant deck that John has designed here, and I like it quite a bit. It seems to be a little bit more dangerous than the comparative Gagarin deck, which is usually just trying to tax you out and make it so you can't get in. But this Jinteki deck has the ability to also threaten a kill and brain damage and net damage, and I think that is a really good combo, and it gives Museum of History a greater sense of purpose than just shuffling back in what you could use at the time. Being able to shuffle in a snare is so helpful. And I'm sure John loves thinning out his agenda density even more with more snares. It kind of makes the melange more important. Snares aren't cheap to fire off, but it's still worth taking a few extra turns of melanging just to make sure that the runner is going to hit every single snare that they possibly could encounter. And John is continuing to not leave anything iced up. That's a little bit of a risky play. He's seen that Raphael plays Maker's Eyes. You can assume that Criminals play Siphon. I think that's a fairly safe bet. And I don't know how much ice he's running. I'd assume less than 15. But even still, I think icing up at least HQ here is really good. John did see John did see 2 of Raphael's Maker's Eyes. It's fair to assume that he might not have any more, so leaving Raphael the single accesses off R&D isn't bad. But John needs to protect against the Siphon. If nothing else, it's not going to hurt his economy too much, but he really needs to stop Raphael's economy from getting going. And, the 10 Siphon credits isn't that much in the long term, but if Geist has the tech traders up and he has to use breakers to get in HQ, then it just gains him more money, and it could actually turn into a really big credit advantage in Geist's and Raphael's favor if John is not able to secure his HQ efficiently. Although we do see John here Jacksoning up and even getting more of those good cards in his discard pile. The other thing I really like about John's deck is that between Jackson and Museum of History and Jinteki and Industrial Genomics, you're really utilizing your archives as another play space. It serves as another server, and it's another threat. So it's actually a really cool, well-designed deck. John can even discard a snare if he doesn't want it for whatever reason, and then just shuffle it back in his deck the next turn, and not a big deal. Although definitely going to be opting for the Mushin, and Raphael is probably, I'm not sure if he still has that drive-by, but if he can drive-by the... Okay, oh, nope. So instead, just building board state a little bit, getting all sorts of breakers, same old thing. And John did shuffle that Mushin back. John's probably going to opt to score that. If it was, I couldn't make out quite what it was. But Raphael now has all of his breakers and a Siphon in his hand. So Raphael could even Siphon same old Siphon here, have a huge credit swing in his advantage, and put John at a little bit more of a disadvantage. And that's kind of like what I was talking about, although I don't see how you don't score that out if it is an agenda. That doesn't really seem... Well, I guess it was Mushin, so it's easy enough to bluff as a failed trap at this point. But John opting instead to just draw. And if those... I didn't again, I think one of them was another Museum of History, but John might be opting. Oh, okay, so Raphael does go with a siphon here, leaves John with a difficult choice, but Raphael is probably going to get in, unless it's a very high strength, or at least higher than 4 strength card. Raphael is pretty much guaranteed to get in here. John considering whether or not he wants to res. But outside of Jinteki, or inside of Jinteki, I doubt you're going to see ice that's that high a strength. Unless you import it for a very specific reason. Maybe you'll see an, I don't know, like a assassin or something like that. But the assassin's not going to stop the siphon either. And John just, lets the siphon go through. He's probably, I don't know about probably, but he might be a little bit more worried about HQ accesses at this point than actual siphons. Although John's keeping his hand pretty well hidden. I can't quite make out what it is that he has there. And both these players, he did shuffle something back. I want to say he shuffled the turtlebacks back into his deck, but I can't say for sure. Raphael did opt to clear the tags after the siphon instead of going for the same old siphon, and I'm not sure if I agree with that. I think if you can bring John down to 2 credits, or at least force that ice res so you know what you're dealing with, and John takes out the future perfect. So even right here, if Raphael goes for the same old siphon, brings John down to 0, but most likely now at this point, John has assets that he can res, and it's not gonna harm him too much. I think that was Raphael's window last turn to siphon, same old siphon, get John down to $0. Then if he really wanted to score out that future perfect, it would at least take an additional turn. But the more important thing is if Raphael could have gotten John to 0 credits, that trap becomes moot. It doesn't matter anymore. Although John probably would have res the Architect on that same old siphon like he did here, or on the same old siphon 2 turns ago, like he did here. That's just probably going to force a Shiv res or Shiv trash from Raphael, and it does, getting him cards. No money because there is not a tech trader, which is sad, but getting an access here instead. Seeing a neural, not really going to help John too much right now anyway, but probably going to set up a kill later. And Raphael's considering here. I think he realizes his deck really doesn't seem to be giving him what he needs. Raphael hasn't had a lot of money, just landing the 1 siphon, which is probably the most the most money that he's had all game. I'm not even sure if Raphael plays Shore Gambles. I couldn't actually be sure of that. But he's just not seeing the cards he needs. The Maker's Eye hitting the snare early game was really, really terrible for him. Although he didn't lose anything that was, critically important, he did lose the tempo and that second Maker's Eye, of course, being a huge hindrance, and John shuffling back that melange. But he just hasn't been able to get set up since then. And actually, even still, interestingly enough, Raphael, that is, hasn't played the Forger, and I'm pretty sure it's still in his hand. So he still has the Forger in his hand, but hasn't dropped it yet, so he can only have those 4 Cloud Breakers until Raph drops the Forger, or at least another source of link, but I believe he's only running the Forger in this case. And the Fall Guy as well. So Raphael does have some really helpful cards in his hand. I believe that's another same old thing. But is opting to hold it tight to his chest a little bit more in this game than it looks like he has in the past. And I feel like this deck is John's deck, this Industrial Genomics, is just really, really outside of Geist's comfort zone. It's just not something that this deck was designed to handle, and I know Raphael did come, and this was his fun deck. So getting so far in top 8, I'm sure he's happy with, but didn't expect to see anything quite like this, or anything that had this much money, or required this much money. And I actually think that Raphael does have the tech trader in his hand, it looks like. So Raphael can't afford to run into something or to face check something here. or hit a snare. A snare would be really, really bad. Archives, you can't check right now. Again, just those shocks could take out something that's key. So Raphael needs to just take a turn or two and build his board state, which I guess is good as long as John doesn't go mooshing things out. And of course, speak of the devil, and he shall appear. John mooshing out mooshing and advancing 4 advancement tokens on a face down card. That's probably not good. Could be a Ronin, could be another Future Perfect, could be another agenda. I'm not really sure. I believe Raphael's same old drive-buying, which is a really, really solid move. Taking a look, and it was the Overrider, so that could have been disastrous if Raphael had hit it. Really good play there, going for the drive-by, spending 3 clicks to do it, but that is worth not taking a bunch of brain damage. And of course, John would not let that turn end without 3 credits. So I guess the siphon play would have worked as well, but in forcing John to at least res some stuff in the remotes. But we know John has, I think those were 2 additional Museum of Histories that he had out. So John could have went down to 0 money and of course made the Overrider easy to check, but ultimately I think the drive-by is just a better play. And Archive Memories, pulling back that motion, I'm sure we'll see that in no time. Raphael taking the access while he has the chance and continuing to build a little bit more. So I feel like Raphael is trying to set up for a super turn here. He does, as I mentioned, have the Fall Guys. He has the Levy, which won't be coming into effect too much. But the Fall Guy, the Forger, and the Tech Trader, all in hand, and all are... Okay, so what do you lose with that Peddler? He's... Okay, bad Peddler hitting a Siphon, another Peddler, and just a Fall Guy. So really not that effective, although I feel like Raphael should have played, if that is a Tech Trader in his hand at any rate, I feel like Raphael would have been better served to at least play the Tech Trader. Yeah, now he plays the Tech Trader. I think that was backwards. Tech Trader would have paid for himself had Raphael installed it first before trashing the Street Peddler, but I think that was just a minor misplay there. And John continuing to shuffle things back, thinning out his agenda density every single time. If Raph had an R&D interface, not that he would, because it doesn't really make sense for a Geist deck, but I guess this is true with any deck. I feel like John's weakness in this IG deck is R&D interface, because while there isn't an R&D lock per se, because the Museum of History is constantly forcing the reshuffle, having 2 new accesses every single time would be a big pain. Or Keyhole would definitely, I would imagine, be John's weakness. Although you'd, of course, have to check the agendas on click 4. And John does go with the motion in advance again having $4 or $3 in his hand or in his pool. So if that is an Overrider, that play is live, which would be really, really bad for Raphael. Overrider with 4, bringing him down to 1 hand size. We know John has at least 1 Neural EMP. Very, very likely he has another at this point. He has been Jacksoning and cycling his deck quite a bit. So it's a very real threat. And Raphael cycling out that Fall Guy a little bit more, seeing more cards. I see another Breaker. I see another Fall Guy. Going for it. Going to check. I don't think he has 8 cards, so a Junebuck would kill him. Uh-oh. Overrider lands 4 net damage. Raphael's going to go down to 1 hand size after this. Raphael now has a real big issue with Ronin. He has to respect that. So any other 4 advanced card, or even like a 3 advanced card, could be disastrous for Raphael. John can really just abuse those motions more than he has been at this point. If he just motions out a Ronin, Raphael has to check it, even if John doesn't advance it. It's a really, really big threat. Raphael couldn't afford to hit a 3 advanced Junebug, couldn't afford a 3 advanced Overrider. So this brain damage really, really is bad for Raphael. He has to, I feel like he has to win within the next couple of turns in order to have a shot here. And I mean, like, Raphael needs to check these remotes while John doesn't have money. these could be anything. Of course, Jinteki's traps don't really fire if Jinteki doesn't have money, so looking out for a snare or the legwork would be really good right now. And Raphael not going for it, but I think that was another, that might have been a little bit of a misplay there. If Raphael plays the legwork, it's going to cost 3 to get to the Architect. 5 credits gets him in. He would have enough for an NAPD. John would not be able to do anything, play a side game. With a Future Perfect, John wouldn't be able to, trigger a snare. And I think that would actually see all 3 of John's cards. I feel like that would have been a really, really solid play at that point. But instead discarding down at the end of his turn. And John installing and trying to get some money back, which will not be a problem, I believe. He does run all of these launch campaigns. We've seen one already that has paid off for him. Clicking for credits, not really what John wants to do, but he has enough assets. One of these could even be a melange, which is great. If John does have a melange out, then he'll be able to recover economically. And we do see one of those Ronins that Raphael cannot let land or see play. The Siphon in Raphael's hand might come in handy as well. And just going for the Tech Trader. John resing a Chairman Hero, bringing Raphael down to -1 hand size. Raphael can't discard down, and that's the game. The Chairman Hero kill on the board since probably turn 3. Out of Industrial Genomics. That is...
Good game. This is a coin toss, John.
That Chairman Hero kills off the charts. I don't think I've ever seen that card played in a tournament. And here you go, top 8 in Industrial Genomics, getting the kill after the 4 advanced overrider. I have the finals coming up. It's going to be John D'Alessandri versus Timmy Wong. Check back soon. I have more to come. Thanks for watching, guys. Catch you next time.